My red room flight starting
Welcome
over.
to City Council. It is Tuesday, November 1st, 7 p.m. We will begin with a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilwoman Meekum.
Present? What did you say? I don't know.
I just said we'll start with you.
Ince present.
Please tell us you're here, Robin. Summeray's present.
Well, she looked at me like, why'd you say present? And I'm like,
Oh, no. Okay, Hurst present.
Ewan present.
Okay. Everyone is present, so we will continue. We will have a prayer which I will offer tonight. Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for this beautiful community that we live in, for the opportunity that we have to serve and work here. We're so thankful for those who are willing to serve in this community and for our city staff who work tirelessly to keep us safe and to keep our community beautiful. Please bless and watch over them at this time, that our first responders will be protected and kept safe, that their families will feel peace and comfort while they are serving in our community. Please bless our city staff who also work tirelessly to keep our water systems and other things functioning, that they can be blessed and protected, that all of us will have thy guidance and inspiration to do the things that are right by the residents of this community. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. All right, Pledge of Allegiance, all stand. Okay. We now have an open session where people can come forward and make comments or mention concerns. Do we have anyone that would like to make a comment? I should probably mention comments need to be brief, 2 to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone on Zoom, Jennifer? Okay. We'll move on to the next items, which are presentations. Our first presentation is the Charles W. Wilson Meritorious Service Award. Dave, are you presenting that?
All right. Mike, you need to join me here, please.
Embarrassing.
This does embarrass him, but we're grateful to have him here. So it is a privilege to stand here tonight to recognize Mike for this. This award is named after Charles W. Wilson, and a little bit about him is that he had over 50 years of service in the industry. He was a strong contributor through the American Water Works Association Intermountain section for a great deal of those service years. He spent a great deal of time in the water service. He was a mentor, a leader, and an innovator. And to all those that knew him, he actually was dubbed the name Mr. Water, so that could tell you how well respected he was in the industry. With that, to allow his legacy to continue on, the American Water Works Association Intermountain section provides the Charles W. Wilson Award annually to an individual with over 20 years of distinguished service, who supplies outstanding leadership, mentoring, along with contributions and vision in the advancement of the waterworks industry. Specifically, the award recipients make consistent and exceptional contributions to the AWWA Intermountain section, the waterworks industry, service to their community, and plans for long-term growth and expansion to meet the needs of the water users' present and future needs. I'm proud to stand here today. 20 years ago, I was borderline harassed by this man to come and join our team here. And reluctantly, even, did so. I left the private industry and came to serve here, and now with no regrets. It's over these past 20 years that I've gained a clear understanding of his heart for the industry and all those that he affects every single day. This award is well deserved by a true leader in our industry and a genuinely caring, and compassionate man. And with that, I present to you Mark Carlson, if you'll join me.
No speech, right?
Is somebody gonna snap a picture of this?
Yeah, I think we need to get a picture.
I'd like that. You guys all?
We need a picture of this. Bryce is usually here taking pictures.
I'll take the picture.
You're gonna have to hold it over his shirt, it's translucent. We can't.
Put it in portrait mode so you can blur Mark out.
Hey, that is that new
That was huge.
Be sure to send that to Bryce so that it gets in the
Yep.
next newsletter.
Yep.
Okay, I will make a note of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. You are an asset to our city and we all know it.
Yeah, I'm going to take a minute and just say something. I met with Mike today. I've met with him a few times over the past few months, and this is a very well-deserved honor and award, and I know I speak for everyone on the council and for the mayor that we really appreciate the service and contributions you've made to our city. I think one of the neatest things is your mentorship of others, and we really appreciate all that you've done and given to our community. So thank you. Okay, next presentation, UDOT I-15 Environmental Impact Study Update. Justin, what's your last name?
Justin Smart.
Okay, Justin Smart, thank you.
Well, thank you. That's a tough act to follow, but I'm going to do my best. Standing ovation, I'm not expecting that at the end of my remark. So my name...
What you present tonight.
Yeah, as has been said, my name is Justin Smart. I'm representing the UDOT's I-15 EIS from Salt Lake City to Farmington. And we came and presented to you maybe 3 or 4 months ago at the front end of our process where we were just starting into formal scoping. And we appreciate you giving us a few minutes tonight to give you an update on where we are and the fun that we're about to have over the next month or so. I see a few smiles, and I've already been wished luck by one of you. I'm not going to name names. But if you could just go to the next slide,
And are you
Jennifer.
UDOT employee or Horrocks, a third-party consultant?
So I'm a consultant. I work for Penna Powers. We're part of the public involvement communications team. So we're contracted to UDOT. I've got my laptop here just with a few notes to make sure I don't miss anything. By way of just kind of big picture context, this is a graphic that describes the overall EIS process that's defined by the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA is what it's known as. And basically, you can see that we've got 2 phases behind us at this point. We did a kind of an early scoping that was a little informal as far as NEPA goes, where we did a lot of interaction with folks from your communities, from your neighborhoods, from your business community, and other special interest groups. And then we moved straight from there into purpose and need and scoping. And through that whole process, really the bottom line was we did a lot of listening. There were things that we already knew needed addressed, but we wanted to know from the community members, those who live here, those who travel here, what needed attention, what potential solutions were, and that's the whole point of scoping, which brought us to a formal purpose and need. That purpose and need statement is, you'll hear it a lot over the course of an EIS. It's what really drives decision making throughout the process. And so we had a draft purpose and need that we put out for public review in that scoping period, and allowed people to react to that. Did we get it right? Are we addressing the right things? Or you help us identify all the needs and help us identify really the purpose of this study. And what it boiled down to through that process was people wanted UDOT to fulfill its mission. UDOT's mission is to improve quality of life through transportation. And so all of the decision making that's happened thus far has been driven by improving quality of life for all users. That was another thing we heard a lot from the listening stage, if you will, is it's not just about cars, and UDOT is not about moving cars, it's about moving people. And so we've paid a lot of attention to all modes and all users as we've moved forward into this next phase that we're currently in, which is alternatives development. And alternatives is a fancy word for potential solutions. So alternatives are what the entire study team has come up with as far as, okay, we need to move people across I-15, and that's currently a barrier. We need to move people more efficiently along I-15. We need to get people to transit and safely where they're going on bikes. And so all of that has been taken into account. We're putting the finishing touches on the materials that we're going to use to roll out to the public in this alternatives phase. And then you can kind of see where we go from there. The purpose of where we are now is giving the public an opportunity to see these alternatives at a conceptual level. We're not designed down to the point where we know exactly where a line might be drawn to provide a particular road width or a particular bike path or whatnot. So really the focus of this alternatives development phase is on, did we get it right? Is it going to improve your quality of life? Does it help you be more mobile in the way you want to be mobile? And so focus more on the alternatives and less on the impacts. Because at the next stage, we'll take all of these alternatives and refine them quite a bit further through an engineering process to then come out in the DEIS next year. And at that point, we will have a pretty good idea of impacts. And at that point, we'll want to work with the public for review and feedback on how we can potentially minimize or mitigate those. So if you go to the next slide, please. I spoke to this a little bit already, but on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see anything that's in black there is an alternative. So at various interchanges, there's 2 or 3 different ideas of how to improve things at interchanges, not only again for cars, but for those who walk, those who bike, those who ride a scooter, those who want to get to the bus. And so there are a couple of proposals for how to improve I-15 itself, and then a lot of thinking has gone into how to move people at the interchanges and how to move people away from the interchanges across I-15. So the purpose of my time here tonight is not to get into the specifics of the alternatives. That's going to happen at a public rollout in a couple of weeks. But just wanted to reinforce that idea that all of these alternatives are designed to provide for better mobility, to improve health, to strengthen the economy, and to connect communities. We recognize one of the things we've heard loud and clear is that I-15 is a bit of a barrier. And so trying to find ways across that barrier to make your community a little more cohesive. Maybe go to the next slide. Which brings us to really the exciting part I spoke of earlier, and that is we are just on the cusp of the public rollout of these alternatives. So you can see our comment period for these alternatives begins on November 10th, so 10 days from now. And on that day, we will make live on our study website all of the alternatives. There will be an interactive map that you can zoom in and zoom out and take a look at, turn one alternative off and one alternative on. So there will be a lot of information out there for public digestion, if you will. We're not just going to have open houses. We have some working groups planned. We've already met throughout the process of developing the alternatives with many from your communities, from city staff, and we'll continue to do community presentations in formal settings like this one and perhaps less formal settings. And we have 3 meetings planned that next week. So the public launch will be a week from Thursday. And then the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have 3 meetings planned. The first is a virtual meeting, and that'll be via Zoom. It'll be a Zoom webinar format where people can log in and listen. There'll be a formal presentation. I see you have a question.
So I can see these meetings. We also have an email from Brant about a meeting on November 9th. Is that?
It's a walkthrough specifically for, there's a walkthrough.
Okay. So I know that the intent has been to get with cities ahead of this as part of the launch. So that is, maybe call it a sneak preview.
Okay, that's great. I just wanted to clarify so I knew where needing to be.
Yeah, good question.
So there was a meeting that we got an invitation to on November 16 at the Farmington
No, it's on the 9th.
Community Center.
That's the one on the 9th.
That's the one on the 9th. The one
So-
that Gina just asked him about.
You may have,
My calendar.
A working group being held on Wednesday, November 9th from 5 to 8 at Farmington Community Arts Center. So this is a local area working group.
Okay.
It's a little different than what he's talking about. This is the official
Yeah,
comment.
and you may also be
Yes.
getting it confused with, there's a Wasatch Choice Transportation Workshop. There's multiple things
Yep.
going on. Maybe you can help educate us, but that's on the 14th up in Farmington.
He was talking about the one on the ninth.
Correct, yeah.
so let me see if I can draw a thread through all these. The ninth meeting sounds like the one that our team initiated from a technical standpoint to sit down and walk through the alternatives that are being proposed right in Centerville City.
And that's from Tiffany, yeah.
Okay,
Tiffany's
and,
working it.
and then the meeting you may have on the 16th is probably an invitation for our public open house, which is a kind of come one, come all event. And that's, as you can see, at the South Davis Rec Center. I think that's the one you're referencing. And then the WFRC, they do, as part of their regional transportation plan development, every cycle, they update that plan every 4 years. They do these sub-regional meetings, they call them. I don't know exactly if that's the term they're using, but they try to chunk up the whole WFRC area and meet with subgroups within that geography. And so that meeting for this area happens to be planned on the same night as our virtual meeting. But we actually coordinated with them, felt good enough about it that we'd proceed, they'd proceed, and there's enough other opportunities for our study to be involved that if one person wants to, participate in an open house but still participate in the WFRC meeting, there's plenty of opportunity to do that. So does that help clarify?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate you bringing all those up. There is a lot going on.
Thank you for kind of walking us through that so we don't miss anything.
Sure. So on that Monday, some of you will be at a WFRC meeting, but the general public will be invited to a virtual meeting where we'll do it's the only of the three where we'll actually do a formal presentation because it's a Zoom environment. It's a little tough to just kind of have a free-for-all open house. So there will be a presentation of the alternatives, of the purpose of feedback. We're actually going to record that presentation and post it on the website later for people that aren't able to participate in any of the three of these. So that'll be one avenue people have to become educated. And then we'll have the two in-person open houses, and those will be true open houses. There won't be a formal presentation. People can come and go. We recognize that that 5 to 7 hour, it tends to be the best time to try to host the public, but there are potentially some barriers to that time of day for families. And so we've provided some opportunities to perhaps overcome some of the barriers. So one of the things for those that come and participate, they'll be able to get a voucher if they would like to get some food at a food truck. We also we'll be providing a kind of a kids corner. It'll be in the same space, so you really won't be dropping your kids off, but there'll be activities for kids if people need to bring their children to the open house. And then another thing that some have a barrier with just getting to a physical location. And so we've partnered with UTA and we're leveraging their on-demand system. And for those outside of the on-demand system area they have a contract with Uber and Lyft to kind of bridge those gaps. People will be able to get a ride to the open house if they need to. So we hope that just increases the odds of participation, proves equity of the process. And again, I said, for those that can't make any of these meetings, there will be plenty of information available on the website for people to review. And then all of the commenting will either happen at the open house or online, and then we'll provide other avenues for those that maybe are digitally challenged for whatever reason. But they'll be able to make comments right on that interactive map, write us a letter and send it to a physical snail mail address, or send us emails on the website. Any questions about the process? Okay, maybe go to the last slide then. This is our study team's contact information. What we've already been working with your staff here at Centerville City to try to get the word out as best we can. But as you're influential people in your community, if you can help us just spread the word that this opportunity is becoming available. Really the best thing to do is to point people to our website. It's simple, i15eis.utah.gov. If they go there, all the information about the open houses, all the information about the alternatives, it's all going to be there starting on the 10th. So we also have a Facebook group that we encourage anybody to join. That's where we kind of put the official word out from a social media standpoint. We'll also be sending a mailer, putting posters up around the study area. We'll be putting social media ads out and leveraging all of the social media platforms to put the word out. So we're hoping that we can get the word out far and wide, that people have a chance to come and weigh in on the future of transportation and quality of life in the area. And I'll just leave that contact information up, and happy to field any questions that you might have.
So we have been hearing for some time about widening of I-15 and it taking space out into frontage road and so forth. Is that pure fact, or is that subject to what these meetings steer towards and conclude?
So without going into a lot of detail, I can tell you that there are a couple of I-15 alternatives, both of which would require widening of I-15. That's, I guess I'll call it a necessary evil based on the traffic modeling we've done, even with improving options for other modes. And you look at the year 2050, and we're probably not going to be able to accommodate the mobility of everybody without adding some capacity to I-15. So at this stage, we're not necessarily asking for feedback on, does it run over this much property or these types of amenities in our community. We're more looking at, does this meet the need in a way that feels right for your community? Certainly we'll take feedback on perceived impacts that people see, but both of the options at this point would require some widening of I-15 to accommodate travel into the study year, which is 2050. So we look out at what the demand is expected to be and what it would require across all modes of travel to meet that demand, and a wider I-15 is currently proposed to be part of that.
And if I can just piggyback off that, it's part of my city manager report, but there is this level of, with the widening of I-15, the interchange is going to happen as well with that. What's that impact to the interchange to Marketplace as well as 400 West, depending on what option is chosen? So we're at a place right now where we're trying to work with UDOT and Wasatch Front Regional Council to make sure that what we're planning for Marketplace isn't completely tore up and then redone with what's happening potentially in 5 years with the I-15. So there is a little bit of staff is working with UDOT, Wasatch Front, and others to make sure what we plan for Marketplace and 400 West will be consistent or work well with what the potential plan will be. The issue is we're going before UDOT is going to have an opportunity to actually get their conceptuals out. So we're just trying to work together now as best we can. So we're not wasting taxpayer money. So there might be a slight delay to our projects with the intent of trying to make sure we are studious with the funds. Is that fair, Mike? Mike wasn't listening. He's saying yes. Anyway.
Other questions?
I've got a couple. When is the draft EIS? You said next year, but beginning of year, I'm assuming?
Fall.
Okay.
Fall is what we're looking at
Okay.
at this point.
Okay. And then when is the final EIS expected to be completed by?
So our current plan would be to have it in 2024. Likely, I don't even know if we're at knowing a season yet, but front half of the year, I guess I'll say, is our current plan. I'll put the one qualifier on that every study I've ever been involved in has to have a little bit of a float for, it's designed to be responsive to the public and the process. So if there were some huge issue to come up that we would need to grapple with, that might push the schedule. But currently, that's the plan.
And to Bill's point, we probably wouldn't know the exact impact until you're through your alternative stage and you're actually doing construction drawings at that point, correct?
Well, at the DEIS is where we hope to provide enough detail that you can respond to, okay, wow, that's a big impact. What can we do?
20 feet, is it 40, is it 60?
Yep. But that's a good point, that we're not quite there yet. And so,
I knew you weren't, I just didn't know at what stage you'll be able to refine that prior to a construction set of drawings.
yep. And so the steps after that, once we get environmental approval, there has been funds programmed for construction. What form that takes is TBD, but it would move into a project development phase where the construction drawings would be put together and the method of delivery would be decided, and then would move into construction after that. So likely 2026 would be the earliest construction would happen.
As far as the purpose and needs statement, is that accessible online now?
It is. There's a purpose and need memo that's available on the website. It's not on the homepage. As we move through this process, we move things to a study materials and documents section.
Okay.
So if you go into that, it's right on the top nav, that section is. If you click into there, all of the memos are there.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate the time.
We appreciate you coming.
Thanks for your partnership.
We could give you a standing ovation if you want.
Please don't. It's clearly not deserving.
Okay, moving on to business items, we have a public hearing scheduled for the Waterwise Landscaping Zoning Code Amendments. Corey?
Motion to open up the public hearing after the staff report. No, see, it was a motion, and it's okay, it's legit, you can do it.
So do we want to vote on it now?
I don't know, it was fun to watch Corey just freeze, like,
Yeah,
which
all right.
was it?
I'm good. Just a tangent, thank you, just a tangent, UTA kicks off their this month with their planning of the bus route system, so a lot going on. So to the item at hand, zoning code text amendments. If you recall, the council gave direction to the commission and staff to go back, take a look at how we manage some landscaping, see if there's a few water-wise improvements. Now, as you recall, we did go in and add to the landscaping section a water-wise section. So that came to you previously, council adopted it. It was a recommending plan, a highly recommended, but not compulsory, could be compensatory, but compulsory at this point. But we did add that section, but we still needed to go back to the fundamentals inside the landscaping ordinance and see if there were some changes that we could be sensitive to the waterwise. Stepping back, we do not call out a turf requirement in our ordinances. That's something that people still struggle with, is the city requiring turf. We're not requiring your typical Kentucky bluegrass turf styles. However, in the ordinance, the amount of landscaping percentage, so we have an area percentage, so examples, commercially, you have 15% of your parcel area you're developing is landscaping. We have a percentage of landscaping that you're expected in that required area. And so an example, current code is we require 75% of that devoted area to be plants. And when you think of, depending on the size of your project, 75% it can be a substantial area, and so the easiest and default is turf. So you see that turf does become a component. So that was part of the evaluation. How can we be more sensitive to that way? We looked at it. The Planning Commission struggled a little bit because this transition theme idea to going from grass to artificial turf or gravel is a big leap in design changes, in what people feel is aesthetically appropriate. And so there was some discussion, particularly about the 75% requirement. And the Planning Commission debated, should it be 60, should it be 50 or not? That was a component that they did struggle with probably the most in looking at it. Staff came back to the Planning Commission with a 50%. That's where we started as staff, and we just started at a base talking about 50%. So the 75% would reduce to 50%, an example. And the Planning Commission actually went ahead and passed that. So that's part of your recommendation, is to go from 75 to 50. There was also some discussion on if we start really adjusting this, the issue of cemetery space, which is in a public facility zone versus a commercial and industrial zone. If we went and started putting caps in our public facility zones for our schools, and they have their playground and ball field areas, the cemetery, sports complexes. I'm expanding some of their initial thoughts already, but cemetery was a specific item brought up, that if we start putting these caps on it, how does it affect that? And in the initial language would have affected the public facility zones. And so they wanted to find some way of creating some balance, so they added and inserted a clause for commercial and industrial areas. So the public facility zones was pulled out of the standard, and the commercial and industrial were couched together. And this is the first hint at your mandatory requirements. It's still a bit subjective, but the idea of that section is that we don't want you to take large areas if you by chance have them, and plant them all grass. So you'll find the shall start showing up here. These large areas shall not be expansive areas of turf. Still a bit subjective, because how large is an expansive area? Still sits in that subjective term, expansion area, but we are trying to tell the commercial industrial that we don't want you to just pick turf as your only option in your planting scheme. So that came into play. The third major component that came into play was the west side of I-15. West side of I-15 does not have secondary irrigation. And in the ordinance, we currently allow, we reduce the amount, so in commercial industrial, you don't have to do 15%, you can do 10%, but we still had the idea that you were either doing the traditional landscaping, or you could do a xeriscaping. And a xeriscaping, if you truly know the term xeriscaping, is not just plants that take low water. It is really a native system. It's the idea that you'll establish native plantings, you'll irrigate first couple of years to establish them. After that, you can basically cease using the irrigation, and the idea is the natural rainfall would take care of those plantings. With the change in patterns, I don't know what the natural amount of rainfall is going to be as we go along. So we made some adjustments to that and went to the drought tolerant scheme. And now we're saying, we don't want you using turf, and we don't want you using a lot of high water use plants where you don't have secondary, because you're using our culinary resources. We want a drought tolerant scheme, and we want somebody a landscape architect that has experience in a drought tolerant scheme. And this is the idea. Some of the examples out there on the west side is when they've tried to implement a drought tolerant xeriscaping, we end up with gravel and some trees. I don't know if you see out my window, but go to my office, you'll see what happens. And so we want a licensed person to say, we'll meet your landscaping ideas, we'll do it a drought tolerant scheme, and we'll do a better job, because we'll use a licensed architect for that. So I think those are the major components, if I recall, from the ordinance. Not a lot of changes in the sense of revamping a landscape ordinance. Like I said, we don't require turf. We now have the suggestions of water-wise landscaping, but they're not compulsory. And then we approach into the commercial industrial, and we start approaching some compulsory yet subjective standards to our landscaping. So we're just plowing along a little bit, seeing what happens into the future. So Planning Commission's recommended the current changes to you, and ended up 7-0 after all of the debate.
I assume that Commissioner Chagroot had quite a bit of input in this?
Yeah, she participated quite a bit into it. As you know, landscaping trees are her forte.
Yeah. Which I appreciate.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's great. I'm glad that they talked about it. Does anyone have any questions?
Only changes we're making is to the industrial and the,
Well, you're changing the overall scheme from 75 to 50. But when we
that for
start talking,
residential too? Or that's just,
the landscaping ordinance does not cover residential like single family.
Okay,
It
that's
will
what I
plan developments for multifamily, but it does not, we still have no real requirement for single family
okay.
landscaping. So it's commercial, industrial, public facilities are still a part of it, but the overall grass turf area is not called out in the public facility zone due to schools, parks, cemeteries.
I think you've done a great job.
Yeah, I agree. This has been scheduled for a public hearing. George made a motion for that.
It was never seconded.
Second. I was-
Okay.
Now we got the second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the public hearing is now open.
So I heard at the special district training that they are looking to possibly pass legislation for public meetings and public hearings to require that there is a minimum amount of time that they're kept open.
Okay.
And I hope it does not actually materialize into a bill, because they're talking about a public hearing should have a minimum of a 60-minute window.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
Get
oh.
through any agenda item.
We should encourage them to attend some local meetings to make sure they're doing something that applies to the masses.
I thought it was an interesting comment, but the rest of us were like, are you serious?
Who made this suggestion?
So the state auditor's office was talking about pending things. There's not a bill file open yet, but this was one because apparently some special districts are really great about opening and closing a public meeting in like half a breath. And so apparently somewhere in the state, somebody's been disenfranchised from the public hearing process, and now because of the single bad actor, nobody gets recess.
I
So
can actually think of a specific example where they maybe could be a little more generous, not Centerville City, but, is there anyone on Zoom that is, okay, do we have a motion to close?
Motion to close the public hearing?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Any other discussion on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2022-22.
Okay,
Second.
okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Corey, will you thank the planning commission for their efforts on that? I know that from experience, sometimes you spend a lot of time working through those details, and I appreciate all the efforts they put in. So, okay, let's see here. We are moving on to the fee schedule amendments for the cemetery fees, which we discussed a little bit in a work group session. Lisa, do you want to, Brant,
Well, just
either
to,
one of you want to say anything?
I would just like to give a staff report in case people are just reviewing this part of the
Okay.
meeting. But
Great.
the staff was directed to prepare some amendments to our fee schedule regarding the definition of resident for purposes of our cemetery fees. We've had a number of issues over the last few months where significant residents were considered non-residents for purposes of the interment fee. So staff has proposed a resolution that would revise the definition of resident to include someone that has lived here for at least 25 years, regardless of where they resided at the time of death. So this would be in addition to additional definitions that are already in place. For instance, if they own property here, if they were a legal resident, but they were just out of the country at the time. And as mentioned, the council did discuss this in a work session today, and there were some additional recommendations to perhaps broaden this to apply to more situations where people might have some sort of interest in the city that they might want to be considered residents for purposes of our cemetery fees. And just to be clear, this really only applies to whether or not they can purchase a burial plot at the time of need, and/or whether they're, and their immediate family, as well as the internment fee.
Okay, discussion, questions?
So this resolution, do we have people who are currently, if we change the definition, they'll become eligible, that there's a time of need? My question is really based on, should we pass what's here tonight and then add the additional recommendations? That's what I'm trying to get at.
So this would be retroactive to July 1st, and as we know of 3 situations where they would be considered residents and receive a refund, which would be a cost of $3,000. There's a $1,000 difference in each situation. So that's what we're addressing today, is those 3 situations that we're aware of.
So I'm not horribly opposed to changing the definition and then modifying it again with the additional stuff that we talked about, or does everyone want to wait? I mean, if it's a refund situation, I guess it's not as pending, but
What you're suggesting, George, is make a motion to pass this, but still direct staff to discuss the items we talked about during the work session.
right, because this covers the immediate 3, and then the others we can add. That way we're not causing hardship for people.
It'll be resolution 2022-29 or whatever.
Right.
We think that's great. That would be a great start.
Lisa,
to
Brent,
this.
do you have any problem with that from a staff perspective? At least solves that short term, hey, let's take care of those 3 instances, and then it at least has us on the future agenda.
And then come back with those alternatives that you
Yeah.
discussed.
We'd like to schedule a future work session, and yeah, we'll discuss those in a little bit more detail with some impacts that we might have or situations that we can think of.
We've got to open this up to the public hearing, but do you need us for the record to restate those, the list that we talked about?
No, I don't think so. We've got the notes from the work session. Lisa has the notes.
And we're not having a public hearing, right? Am I,
No, this is going to be.
Oh, it's not a public.
It's not a
Oh, I
public
didn't-
hearing.
Sorry.
do,
So I would have a motion that we approve resolution 2226 for the cemetery fee definition of resident with the additional staff instruction to incorporate in a future council meeting the definitions discussed during the work session.
Second that.
okay? We'll do a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Move on to the next item. This is a master landscape maintenance agreement with UDOT. Lisa, I believe, is handling this one.
Yes, thank you. We received a proposed master landscape maintenance agreement from UDOT. We do have some landscaping agreements with UDOT, but they would just like to formalize the procedure moving forward. We've done something similar with all of our utilities. When they come in and do a project, we do a master utility agreement. But essentially, what they're trying to do in this agreement is come up with a master landscaping maintenance agreement where all the local entities understand whose responsibility it is for the landscaping adjacent to, or within the right-of-way, but adjacent to the roadway. Most of these obligations are already set forth by statute. So the state legislature has said, look, the Utah State Department of Transportation is going to be, in charge of basically curb to curb. But then the local entities are sometimes obligated to take care of the landscaping adjacent to it. So one area that I think is an example is we have a landscape maintenance agreement with them next to 7-Eleven, and perhaps that landscaping that was in the middle of Parrish that we've now taken out. So in there, I've reviewed this, and I think there are some things that we'll need to talk about with the city engineer and Public Works to make sure we're doing. There are some obligations that, if we change any kind of landscaping, we have to touch base again with UDOT. But this is just an overall master landscaping agreement saying we all understand the rules of the game, but then we're going to enter into individual ones, for instance, for the individual projects that might be going through the city. So in their email to us, they said that they are not inclined to make individual changes. They would like the cities to enter into this, again, because it's just implementing state law and state administrative rules and regulations. We will have more negotiating discretion, I think, when we get those individual ones for
Lisa, does this primarily affect frontage road? I mean, is that the bulk of our maintenance between the barrier wall and the fence along frontage road, depending if you're north or south of Parish?
Yeah,
On
I
our
think
direct
what
impacts?
started this is the West Davis corridor. I mean, I think it's that major project that they're saying, okay, we want to get this in place with this big project, but
Really doesn't affect us from a day-to-day basis at this point, does it?
other than, I mean, the only actual landscaping agreement that I can think of that we did with UDOT was Parish Lane, but I don't know if anybody can think of anything else. I recall entering into that one and learning
I guess what I'm
that
saying
local
is,
government's obligated to
not-
take care of some
do
landscaping.
we not have a landscaping agreement, or do we do the mowing, Mike?
Well, and you don't even need it because we're obligated by state law.
Right, I
So we
understand
may or
that.
may not have one, but yeah.
Right, we're
That might-
obligated to do it, so we're responsible for the mowing of the weeds and stuff along the frontage road?
Well, frontage road, I think we actually have maintenance of even the road.
So we have a document with 4 signatures to agree to do what we already have to do.
So the email states it's based on this is being sent out to all the West Davis corridor cities, the cities being impacted by West Davis corridor. Now we're on the south end, so what is the real impact regarding this? But nonetheless, it's not just this project, it's all future landscape maintenance agreements that we may enter into, which we may have more if the widening of I-15. Frontage Road, so you're aware, is we maintain the road that's on state property. So we maintain that. So, anyway.
And I just talk about the landscaping.
We
It's not
maintain- we
landscaping.
maintain all of that.
The weeds, we mow down the.
Right,
the
and there was
weeds.
conversations 2 or 3 years ago of beautifying that area, which were put on hold until we know what's going on with the I-15 widening.
But we
But
do
we
have
do
frontage
maintain it.
road, Parish, Main Street.
Main Street.
Those are our main UDOT roads in the city.
I can see the 3 are thinking really deeply of the fact they're trying to figure out any other
Yeah,
situation.
I was gonna say.
But Bruce might have, Bruce also helps maintain some of those areas, so Bruce may be aware of some more, but that's all we're aware of.
Okay.
So staff is recommending that we approve this, and then staff will work with UDOT, I guess, for the separate individualized landscaping, in case we want upgraded landscaping in conjunction with the West Davis corridor. I haven't been involved in any of those discussions yet, but.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I didn't know that was an option, because that would be great if we could. Our frontage road has always been an eyesore. People always say, yes, I know exactly when I hit Farmington because it's pretty. So,
Yeah.
we did sleeve some water under the frontage road a couple of years ago, so we do have access to water on that side, depending on what things happen, so.
That's good. All right, anything else? We have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve master landscape maintenance agreement with UDOT regarding landscape maintenance responsibilities for landscaping improvements located within the state rights of way.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. All right, moving on to the summary actions. I think are we prepared to make a motion on this? Is there anything, Brant, that is beyond the scope of the budget that was approved?
There's none.
Okay.
All of this is within budget.
If it's within budget, can I just ask staff to say how far under budget we are, so we can kind of keep track of under budget as well? I know you probably want to use that as that little safety, but it's just nice for us to know. I'm not keeping.
Yeah, and everything that
tabs.
we even budget is gonna be, we're getting an idea, so trying to state when we're above or under or this or that, there's always moving pieces throughout the year, so that's.
Correct, and that's why I'm saying, it's just nice as this council to know how those are shaping out as we make approvals, as we go forward.
Or maybe just in general, are we paying more for the vehicles than we anticipated? or-
Well, we keep track of that, we already know that. That's why,
Yeah. He's just saying, you're just saying you want the
yeah,
same thing
by
if
how
it's a
much
little
under budget
under.
are we? It's just a nice thing to know.
Is there anything in the quarterly financial that would give that number cumulatively, because we have.
And that's the
That's
next.
probably
question.
next week, or next meeting that we have.
No, it's tonight.
Tonight,
Right?
Yeah.
yes, tonight.
That's right.
Okay. Do we have a motion for
Fran,
these?
I'm not asking that request to make it more difficult for you. I'm only asking that just to just for knowledge purposes on the report itself.
Sure.
Yeah. That's helpful.
It's not gonna be that relevant, because for instance, even in my budget, I haven't had any training, so I'm way under budget in my training.
Yes, but what I'm saying is you haven't
We
made.
could report that.
You haven't made an actual expenditure.
But even if I did, I mean, unless you're saying, did we know exactly what that training was going to cost?
Well, for example, when we approved the truck in advance, we knew exactly how much over we were going to be, and we're gonna have to do a mid-year adjustment or a quarterly adjustment. It's nice to know on the flip side. Why do we only know when we're over as opposed to how much are we under on a specific capital purchase? Now, I'm not saying operational,
I think
hey.
it's more just capital, not necessarily training or.
Yeah, I'm not saying, hey, you need to let us know where we're at operationally, because we get that as part of the.
So if we're gonna go down this, I just wanna, so you've already approved these purchases through the budget process. So really the question is, do these actually need to come before the council for your approval once again? Okay, now, I know what you're gonna say, Councilor Matthew, but yeah, there's a dollar amount associated with it.
And I don't disagree with, I frankly don't disagree with you either, Brent. It's just not, it's an informational piece. I'm not asking you for an up-down vote. It's just, hey, this is how far.
But
in the budget
everything
we
is,
came.
so we might be under here, so the ones that we were over, did we really even need to justify the over because we're gonna be under here, and everything washes out at the end? So if we kept track of every we're doing that now, right, as staff, but really it doesn't start shaking out till we get further down the line.
And I don't disagree with that. I agree with you. I'm just saying, hey, how far under were we?
When we went over, it was more of a, hey, just so you know, right? It's not necessarily we're tabulating, really calculating that specific piece of equipment. What we're finding out is everything's over at this point, right? I mean, that's with the cost. Okay.
What I was going to say is, there's obviously a budgetary line item, but the reason that I think these still should come before the council is if there is any major hiccup in the economy or otherwise, I don't want to be on cruise control spending 184, 64, 46. I want to be able to say, whoop, we're delaying that purchase. So to me, we're still, I don't ever want to give that up to say it's in budget and just let it happen. If it's a major capital expense, it
And
needs
that's
to be
great,
here.
but we have under summary action calendar for that purpose.
Right.
There doesn't really need to be a further debate or just
Correct.
differentiating between the up or down.
We're essentially approving what we'd already approved.
Correct. So that's why we have summary action, should be one simple motion unless there's anything crazy, which we technically would remove for summary action if there was any issues with it, because it's not just a one motion. But everything's there, which means everything is falling in line with what's already been approved.
I just don't know I don't understand the hesitancy. Why not tell us how far under that purchase is from budget? I mean, I can look it up pretty easily myself. And
Not necessarily a
simple
hesitancy, it's
subtraction.
just where does that stop in saying up and over on all things, right? So you're saying this and then,
What's a capital purchase?
Just on capital purchases is what
Right.
it's asking.
Okay.
I don't,
I mean, Nate, I don't see us having an issue doing that, but anyway.
I'm going to try this in 2 motions.
Okay.
So no, I'm not necessarily resisting, I'm just trying to figure out the unintended consequences of making that here, what else does that apply to? That's what I'm trying to figure out in my head as we go through.
I wasn't thinking of it that complicated.
Well, that's why the hesitancy is not saying what you're saying is, I'm resisting what you're saying because on merit, it's just figuring out what does this impact? Anyway, I can't think of anything right now.
I do agree with Spencer to the point that, like, it is like, we've seen these before. I don't necessarily keep track of every line item from our budget in July, but, so I can see what he's saying. It would be convenient to just see that, but.
Yeah, especially on individual purchases, like this. I agree. It would be nice to know, are we beating target, or are we getting beat up in the marketplace?
Right, which we would just put as the background information on each item. So again, it can still be one motion.
So when we were talking about the police, it was the police, but when we bought the vehicles, we're at $222,480, whereas we had adopted $218,500. I'm just keeping track of it on the capital projects budget only, and I think this qualifies under that.
So I think he's trying to say he's never going to be under budget, he's only going to be over budget.
No, it
Therefore,
says
it would be
under budget in the report. I looked it up. I just want to know by how much. It's just nice to know.
Right.
Don't you like to know how much money
Well,
you
the thing that would be
did
nice
not
in
have to
this
spend on an
case-
F-150? It's like,
Yeah.
if you came in
Oh,
under
yeah,
your
sure.
family budget, how much did you come under budget? I want to know that.
I think particularly in this case, because we did just do the police cars and they were a little over, it would be kind of nice to be like, oh, we kind of maybe caught a little bit back
Yeah,
up with, like,
Yeah.
overall, our vehicles are right where they should be, or,
And then when Nate comes to do his amendment, we're going to say, okay, I see where we came in high and.
But we're even saying that there may not even be an amendment, so us coming forward with going
Correct.
over, just because we might be able to absorb it in areas within the.
Yes.
Anyway.
I'm gonna stab at a motion here. I'm gonna go ahead and motion that we approve the purchase of body and plow equipment in the amount of $184,282 to Williamson Godwin, and that we purchase the following vehicles for the water department: an F-150 short bed for $42,442, an F-150 short bed extended range tank for $43,516, F-350 long bed extended cab for $44,566, and for the Parks Department, a Ram 1500 for $45,560, and an F-150 for $43,516.
you have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Do we roll call vote, or just all in favor and everyone can,
Individual.
individual? Okay, roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. George, are you gonna do
Yep,
the
I'm gonna do
next one?
I'm gonna do
Okay.
a second motion, and that is to approve the bond reduction for Parish Creek PDO subdivision in the amount of $56,863.10, and to approve the Sheffield Downs subdivision post-plat recordation bond. I've never heard that word. Releasing $51,720.
I have just a question on the Sheffield Downs recording.
Can you get a second
We've
first
had
and then go
so-
into discussion?
You what?
Get a second first and then go into discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay, sorry.
I don't know, I know some of the councils knew, but we have had a ton of complaints, and basements were flooded, the drainage was bad. I mean, there's been a lot up there.
Dave, Mike, sorry. You tend to listen. Just listen. End of warranty discussion. Sorry.
So on this end of warranty, are we discussing any of those things? I mean, I was frustrated at the time when there was drainage problems up there, and they were flooding basements, and they were not willing to come out and
My
stand
understanding
off.
of one of them was that it was a private issue. It wasn't the public
Right.
that was covered by the bond. So it wouldn't be relevant to the end of warranty. But if there's other issues, essentially we hold the bond to make sure that the developer covers things that are listed in the bond, and we do not have the legal authority to hold the bond for other items or any sort of.
And so I guess that's my question, are we positive that they have fulfilled this, so that we're not left holding the bag when there's a lot of unhappy people up there?
If we don't have a legal means to hold the bond.
But that's what I don't want to let it go, if we do have a legal
Yeah,
means to
so
hold the
have
bond.
they appropriately, so here's what the bond's for: street construction and slurry seal, irrigation and street lights and survey monuments on Pages Lane, and then a contingency.
So no drainage.
So no drainage on this one.
Get in trouble. Mike's in trouble.
So to my knowledge, like Sheffield Down, the checklist that we were responsible for is all taken care of. Kevin's guys went through that, Brian Nader went through it. We had all of our staff go through and make sure that our stuff is all taken care of. So anything that would be there now would be the builder's responsibility if something come up. So that's kind of where that's at. With Parish, it'd be the same thing when we go through, and that's just a reduction, right? So.
Yeah, I'm not worried about
Not
Parish, I just
Yeah.
had so many phone calls from
Yeah.
up there. I mean, and
We
I'm-
understand, yeah. The way that I understand it, from when we did the walkthrough, we had the punch list items that they had to fix that the city was responsible for, and all that's been taken care of. Does that help?
No, what she's saying is there are residual problems. And I think what I'm hearing is that those residual problems don't fall under the umbrella of what this bond was for.
Right.
Nonetheless, she is frustrated and concerned about residual problems that just continue happening.
Well, and I understand that, but I mean, that's kind of between the homeowner and the developer, right? If we don't collect the money for the bonds and the stuff that they're doing, then it really, does it fall back to us? You know, I sympathize because we want a good project all the way through, right? We want drainage to work out right and everything else, but there is some litigation that the developer has with the homeowner.
Okay, I just want to make sure
But
that
I
we
don't
did.
think we've had, Dave, have we had any problems up there lately?
I haven't had any calls lately, but I didn't know if they just got tired of
I
calling.
think everything pretty well got remedied out.
Yeah, the only issue, the major issues that went on with Sheffield Downs ended up being private issues. It was they re-landscaped yards downstream from one another or whatever, which changed pitches in the landscape, directed it towards their home, or maybe backed up onto other, but it all ends up being civil issues. It's private and out of our hands.
Okay.
Kevin's really good about making sure the city issues are taken care of, so.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are we ready to move to a vote? Councilwoman Meekum?
I do have a background question. Have these warranty reductions always been part of the summary action calendar? I thought they were generally on the agenda separately, Lisa.
It's always been a part of the summary action calendar that I can recall.
Okay, I didn't, thank you, sorry.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 4th work session, city council, and closed session?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 8. We'll move to the quarterly financial report.
Thank you. Just trying to duplicate it. There we go. All right, good evening, council. This is the financial report for the first quarter of fiscal year '23. It's a little weird doing this in November when we've already had a month since these numbers were accurate, but we'll present it nonetheless. So here on this first page, you've seen this is just a history of our cash position by fund. The main thing I wanted to point attention to here was on the very right-hand column, our PTIF interest rate. You can see that after a long period of having a very low interest rate, it's shot up quite a bit recently. So as of September, our interest rate was nearing 2.5%, which is great for investing and bad for borrowing. But we'll take it.
Can you explain from August to September, year over year in 2021, there wasn't such a large drawdown in that balance, in that cash position? So from August 22 to September 22, there was a drawdown of, let's call it a little over 800 grand. Whereas
Are you looking in the general fund or total?
general,
Up at the top, go September
top
22nd.
I was just trying to figure out why that cash position decreased so substantially in that 1 month.
From 7.6 to 6.8.
Correct.
I would have to look into that more. Not quite sure.
I know we had our police vehicle purchase and things like that, I just, but trying to total up.
I think we had a big bond reduction too for, was it the
We did
Hive?
pay out 500 and 7,000 Summer Hill Lane, did we not?
Yeah, it was Summer Hill Lane. So
Summer
that
Hill
was,
Lane bond reduction.
yeah, we had a large bond reduction.
Okay, thank you.
Why would Summerhill Lane's bond be reduced?
Because they had completed a number of items.
Some of their infrastructure
For their
projects.
infrastructure, so they
I
met the
think
bond
it was the
reduction.
stuff under the ground, right? Like the water lines and the sewer. It probably wasn't sewer.
There's still quite a bit in there it was one of the largest bonds that we've received, so there's still quite a bit of, it's not done, right, so.
Yeah, there's still quite a bit left. All right. This page shows what was above, just looking at the current month, but it also breaks out our restricted cash. So you can see that I made the note that our unrestricted cash in the general fund is about 2.4 million. You'll also note that we have this ARPA funds of just over 2 million that we need to figure out what to do with sometime in the near future. So look for that on a upcoming work session.
Clock's ticking, 24, sunset.
That's right, so. And that's just to decide what we're going to do with it.
Not yet, so as of right now, we have not officially, that will be the intent of the upcoming meeting, is to get the official
Yeah,
unrestricted.
that's what we, okay, that's why I was in my brain thinking that, okay.
All right, moving on to the general fund. Start with their revenues. So the general fund property taxes are still really low. We get the majority of those taxes in November and December. So there's nothing to fret that we haven't received much there. That it's coming in the next month or two. Our sales tax, you can see that we received so far about 1.4 million in sales tax. You know, so far through the year, we're 25% through the year, and we've received 28% of budget of our sales tax. So we're slightly above budget, which is great. As I watch these economic update trainings, there's still this looming gloom of a possible recession. So it's good for now. We'll take what we can get for now, but we're also mindful of being cautious going forward.
Nate, when you say we're on budget, do you mean since the fiscal year started, or are you talking about just August, or, September?
You saying
I'm
It's
talking,
like in August, you said it dropped, or I noticed it dropped a little bit from last year. Are we?
yeah, so we got a little bit less than last year. So what we did, if you remember the budget, we projected 5% above what we had budgeted in last fiscal year, not what we actually received.
Yes.
So even though we received slightly less those first couple of months than we received the year prior, we were still on track for our budget because we didn't project that we'd receive the same amount we did last year. And then this, I can't remember how September's was, but I know October's was a bit more than we got last year.
The weekly
Okay.
updates, it was a
Yes.
little bit higher.
Yeah, yeah. So far it's still looking steady, still looking good.
Okay.
Across the state, it was on average 9% above last year.
The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to was this miscellaneous revenue line right here. You'll notice it's significantly higher than last year. That's due to a few things. First is our interest revenue is a lot better than I had budgeted, and a lot more than we received last year. We also received another $35,000 from FEMA relating to the 2020 windstorm. Congress changed the rules. It used to be, when we went through the FEMA process, it was a 75% share, so we had to pay 25% of the cost. FEMA would reimburse us the 75%. Congress changed that and made it retroactive to a 90-10 share, and so FEMA cut us a check for just over $35,000 for that. And then the other thing that's making that number higher is we had a URS audit that audited the years 2016 through 2019, and they found that we had overpaid to the URS, so they reimbursed us $26,639. So looking at overall revenues for the general fund, We're at 23% of our budget, which again is slightly less than our 25% through the year, but also realize we haven't received our property tax revenue. So I think we're in a good spot here. We'll probably see that number jump up once we start receiving our property tax. Going on to our expenditures, pretty much every department is on track, nothing to be concerned about. You'll see police is a bit higher than last year, and that's in large part due that last year they ordered 3 vehicles, but we didn't receive them until this fiscal year, and so there's a budget amendment coming for that, but that's why they're a little bit over, is in large part due to those 3 vehicles.
That's what I thought that number, that differential was on our cash, so.
And that probably played a role in that too, yeah.
We do have the one that's 106%. Is that something we need to be
It's under
concerned
the
about?
GIS department.
The GSI.
I'm- Engineering.
Oh, engineering?
Yes, the engineering.
No, so that one, and you'll see up here our charges for service, or, yeah, this one, oh no, where is it? Not charges for service. I know that number is offset by the money we receive for our permits and
Okay.
and engineering, so
Line 10 in licenses and permits, is that the one you're referring to?
probably.
We're at 37%,
Yeah,
a little bit higher.
I'll double check it, I'll look into it more, but, yeah, I know that expenditure line is, we collect the fee, we keep a portion of it and pass on the rest. So if we receive more than we're expecting, then those expenditures that percentage will stay high until we amend the budget at the end of the year. So then we do have a net loss in the general fund, and again, this is normal for this time of year until property tax starts coming in, so I'm not worried about anything there. RDA is a similar situation. We're waiting for the tax increment, which provides the majority of the revenue in the RDA. So that's why you see a net loss there as well. And that tax increment comes in the springtime, about March, April. Go down to our capital projects fund. This is the first time that we've ever had expenditures out of here. I'll let you know, I went to a Cassell conference last week and I learned how to update these department headings, so starting next month you shouldn't see this.
Are those just like cost codes?
Yeah, they're the department codes. So I will change them to state the department's name so that it's a little bit easier to understand where the expenditures are coming from. Again, the majority of the revenue right now is that administrative, or the transfer from the general fund that we had budgeted. All right, and then last, just wanted to go over the water fund. Our charges for service our operating revenue is right on track at 25%. That's our, the monthly utility bills, the charges for the use of water. That's right on track. Our overall revenues are above our budgeted amount. And then we do have a little bit of a net loss there, and I think that's just due to the timing of these big construction payments for our big water line projects over the summer. And we normally see a little dip, and then we'll kind of recoup or save a little bit of money during these winter months when there's no major construction projects going on. But like I say, our operating revenue is right on track, and our operating expenditures are slightly less than the 25% through the year. So
Nate, when you say see page 57, that's 57 of our budget, so, but we don't have,
Page 57 in this,
oh, of this report.
of this
Okay,
report,
got it.
yeah.
Okay,
So
I
on
just
page
wanted to make sure
57.
there was, yeah, we weren't confusing.
Yeah. If you go to page 57 on this report, it has a breakdown of all the capital projects going on in the water fund, as well as the developer projects. All right, I think that's, everything else is good.
Never mind. I figured it out.
Well, that's all I have for you. I think overall the city is doing well financially with no major concerns. The audit, I'll give you a little audit update. It's progressing well. We're still waiting on a couple adjusting entries. We just got information from the Utopia bonds. We're able to do those entries, and we're compiling the financial statements. And we're looking for a audit report on the December 6th meeting. But so far, there have been no audit adjustments that the auditors have asked us to make, and there haven't been any findings that I'm aware of so far. So I think that's going well. Any questions?
With our current auditing firm, how long have we been with them now?
Our third year.
Third year, okay. Two more before rotation?
Yeah, we generally want to be at 5 as they start to learn our system, and they're far more efficient. But yeah, you don't want to keep them for too long if they get too comfortable with our system. So yeah, there's a balance. It's just 5 to 7 you'd be okay, but it just depends.
You municipalities kind of rotate through the audit firms?
What we do.
I was gonna say, if we don't use one, another city picks up ours, and we pick up another city.
Just do RFP and try and find the best deal.
Yeah.
That's what Which, by the way, I mean, that plays into it. When they
Yes.
do get familiar with our system, it's actually less expensive.
Right, and so it gets a little
Less
tricky,
time
because
too.
they're gonna be your low-cost provider, but you're saying you don't wanna use them, so
Well, then they get to, yeah,
balance.
yeah. But then you got the risk of them getting too close and too chummy, and then the audit is useless to you.
Right. Right, agreed. Okay, that's everything. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
All right, Councilman Ince. Do you have anything to report for your council report?
Yeah, I forgot to look at it. We have a block captains training meeting coming up on November 17th. That will include invitations to block captains throughout the city.
Will you let us know when that's gonna be? I think that might be something interesting I'd like to be to.
7 o'clock right here.
And that's on the 17th, you say?
And I'm sorry, it's been a busy week and I missed that, so that's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you. The mayor's not here, so we'll wait for him for next time. Brant?
Yes, thanks, Councilmember Hurst. I have just 3 items. Speaking of cemetery, another item that's come up today that we'd like to discuss is the niche walls, the sale of the niche walls. Our spaces, we currently, it's based on time of need. We've had a number of people inquiring, and we'd like to have that amendment to our fee schedule and open those up and sell as many as we can, as fast as we can, because we can always build another niche wall. So be looking for that possible change to our fee schedule on that as well.
I think that would
then we can have a long conversation on
That would
that
satisfy
too.
Lisa's two-pronged approach. Cremation and city staff
Yeah,
exemption.
under request.
That's great. I said
That
it, you
look,
did.
that look was not a
I
good.
said it, you did not, Lisa. To be very clear.
So we'd like to, we don't need time of need for the niche wall, so we'd like to, it's good to see that we have people interested, and so we'll
we'd like to make that change and start selling.
I'm actually surprised that I thought we put those in to avoid time of need, and it was the other one, it was the physical in-ground burials, because niche walls, like you say, you need more, you build more.
Do we have kind of a cemetery master plan of where the additional niche walls would go?
Well, Bruce has we have the 3, but yeah, there's an opportunity for more in that same location, but of course, we can put the niche walls anywhere.
Yeah.
Put them back here at City Hall if we want.
Or up in Freedom Hills Park for veterans.
We have budget for that, so we've talked about that one
Yeah,
as
I
well.
remember you talked about it.
Yeah, I still really want to do that. I think that would be great for the veteran community.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Yeah,
And spouse,
it's
yeah,
nice.
and significant other.
Okay.
Second one, just social media policy. We've been meeting internally as staff. It's a little subcommittee where we're discussing the social media policy that goes in line with the newsletter policy. It's been very educational. Has that been good? So Lisa did our initial draft, and now we're just kind of building off of that with Bryce, Jake Smith, myself, Chief.
I've seen the building of the new, like Whitaker has a better dedicated page and.
Yeah, so we're going to groups. So really what we're trying to do, because we've had volunteers in the past create these pages from their own personal Facebook account. Well, we can't really keep track of all that data when it's attached to. So we're actually creating, so Facebook's got this new method of creating groups underneath your main page, which is far more efficient, and we're able to archive social that information so we can have that data. But the issue is some of these pages are going to lose their followers, and they have to refollow our new page. But it'll be far more efficient in.
Yeah, that got brought up in our trail committee meeting. It's like, wait, you got everybody that may transfer over to a city trails page that's administered through the trails committee, but you may still have people that are like, no, I want to be separate. And what happens?
And if they want to do
I
that,
don't
that's
know.
fine, but it's not.
Exactly.
Again, now we need the consistent look, and we'll have more
Yeah, and that was,
consistency in our
as a
images.
council member, that was my direction is, hey, if you're a member of the trails committee and you're going to talk about trails, it's got to go on the
Needs to be on the
the
city.
city trails page.
With-
If you
with it-
want to duplicate it
Yeah.
on
I
a
was gonna say,
community page,
It's
have
very
that.
easy to share it from the city group page to their other,
Yes,
they
and
want
that
to,
would be,
right?
that would be the preferred method, I think.
But if they're,
Yes, but then.
We'll have a work session on this.
Yeah, I know where you're going, Lisa. Yeah. It's not as easy as that, yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to share this just yet, but I'll share this as well. I did have Lisa Bednarz looking into, we really should have all of our board and committee members with city email accounts instead of using their personal ones. There's going to be a cost to that. We'll talk about, we need 51 more licenses, so, but we need to start
Well, and those are
archiving.
gonna just replicate, because as you get new positions, right?
Yeah, that would just be replacing. So anyway, I don't want to go into detail about that, but that's also what's kind of come out of this is, well, the ground request for the community foundation, right? Go into their personal email accounts. We need Introdyne to start keeping track of all that data. So, how we do that with our boards
All
and
those
committees.
records.
All those records, thank you. I was legal over here. Lawyered. I don't know if you get that reference. Anyway. Yeah, so we'll get into more of that a little bit later. And the last one I have is we have, I don't know if it's official, but we have engaged a law firm to assist with the dissolution of the community foundation. I don't know if we've assigned the official letter to proceed with them, but we are proceeding with that.
yes, yeah, I've had a conversation with them and they will be moving forward.
And again, we're engaging this law firm just to make sure we have taken care of everything. I don't need Lisa necessarily to become an expert in nonprofit law.
Well, it
so.
also, it creates an arm's length where we're not
Correct.
involved in the dissolution since it is a city
Correct.
involved.
So,
That's very true. And there will be likely some IRS filings, so
yes.
I wasn't excited about that. I did review the checklist and, yeah.
That's why we all pay other people to do IRS filings. You're not alone.
And that's all I have unless there's questions for me.
Well, then I would motion that we adjourn the city council to convene a closed session for the purposes of purchase, sale, exchange, or lease of real property, and for the discussion of character competency or physical or mental health of an individual as allowed for under state law, with no intent to return to open session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.